Hey, thanks everyone for joining us today. This is our final Habitat Council meeting for 2022. My name is Eric Edgley. I'm the Habitat Section Chief for Division of Wildlife Resources here in Salt Lake City, and the chairperson of the Habitat Council group. So we'll go through some introductions really quick. We'll start with Randy online. You want us to start and tell us who you are?
Yeah, Randy Hutchison. I'm the Upland rep for the board or council.
Thanks, Randy. Tyler?
Tyler Thompson. I'm the Watershed Program Director with DNR.
Steve Sorensen. I'm the big game rep for the Habitat Council.
I'm Randy Opler. I'm the cold water sport fish coordinator for the Division for Lane for Jerk Fishing.
I'm Justin Shannon. I'm a deputy director, and I'm filling in for a wildlife chief that we're hoping to fill that position today. So sorry I'm late.
Benjamin Allen, Habitat Council representative for Sportfish.
Jack Ray, the Waterfowl rep.
All right. I need to thank Allison and Daniel and Danny for helping us out today, and Lisa's on her way. And so we appreciate their support. Okay, first thing we need to do is approve our minutes from our last meeting, which includes all of our voting on projects. So, are there any questions on the minutes from our last meeting? Do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. We have a motion from Steve and a second from Tyler. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, we approve the minutes. All right. Did I miss anything? Daniel?
No, I got the agenda up now.
Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to be first hearing about a new habitat management plan for Bicknell Bottoms in our southern region, and then we'll move into discussions about our budget and our recommendations for funding for this next year. Try to take a break around 10:30, and then after that, we'll try to wrap up before noon. So with that, I think we're ready to move into the Bicknell Bottoms Habitat Management Plan. So Gary was online to present that.
Yeah, I'm here. Daniel, do you want me to share my screen, or you want to share it?
If you want to share your screen, that is fine. I'll stop presenting.
Either way works for me. I don't know what works best up there. So. You guys see the presentation there?
Yep.
All right. As Eric mentioned, I'm Gary Bezzant. I'm the Habitat Program Manager down in the southern region, and today I want to share with you the Bicknell Bottoms Waterfowl Management Area Habitat Management Plan. We've been working on preparing this over the last several months. Hopefully you all had the chance to review the document that was shared with you last week. I know everybody loves reading 40-page documents, so hopefully you enjoyed that. But anyway, starting with there's a beautiful picture of Bicknell Bottoms. That's our waterfowl management area down in Wayne County. We love it, and it's a great place to go and bird watch. Great place to go and hunt waterfowl, to fish, hunt pheasants. A lot of good options down there. To get started, I back up just a little bit and kind of review some of the state code that tells us what a habitat management plan is and how it's supposed to be developed. We've got this code 23-21 that tells us who should be involved and who needs to review it. We start with a regional office staff reviewing the plan, and then it also goes to our Habitat Council, which is you guys. It'll go out through RDCC in the next couple of weeks. We've reviewed it with the Wayne County Commission already. That was last week, and we are on the RAC agenda for the upcoming RAC. And then the final step, which may or may not need to be part of it, is it's an optional to present to the Wildlife Board, and we're waiting to hear back from the director's office on yes or no if they'd like us to do that for this specific plan. Digging a little deeper into that code, it gives us some direction on what should be in a management plan. Directs us that we should have a management plan for all of our wildlife management areas. The key concepts that need to be involved are a statement of the proposed or anticipated uses, a description of management limitations or conditions covering the area, an inventory of the existing conditions, and then a statement of desired future conditions and a list of strategies to achieve those desired conditions. And then finally, a description of any real allocation of forage, water, or other resources pertinent to the land. And I'm going to take you one step deeper into that code as well, because we really focused hard on this part of the code in this process this time. It tells us that we need to have participation by interested persons, and specifically it lists that we should take into consideration the interests of agriculture, mining, hunting and fishing, recreation uses, adjacent landowners, invite local government officials to participate. And we typically do this in all of our HMP revisions, but we actually took this process and did it very formally this time. We ended up forming an advisory committee to help us develop the plan this time. We met with this committee beginning back in January. We met 5 different times and reviewed the old plan, and then talked about things that they'd like to see in our new plan, and ultimately developed a document we called Goals, Objectives, and Strategies document that was used heavily to develop the new version of the habitat management plan that you guys have all had the chance to review. Just for interest's sake, here's who was on that committee. We had Troy Justinson from SFW representing sportsmen. Mike James is a local fishing guide down in the area and represented anglers. Scott Christensen is a local there in Bicknell that loves hunting pheasants and plays a big role in pheasant hunting in the valley. Boone Taylor is an adjacent landowner and a livestock grazer in the area. Philip Pace is an adjacent landowner and also a downstream water user, has a lot of property he irrigates below Bicknell bottoms. Steve Albrecht is on the Bicknell Town Council and also owns land adjacent to us. We involved Dave Behunin. He's on the Blue Ribbon Council and was able to help from a fisheries perspective. Jeremy Bone was a really fun guy to have involved with the committee. Absolutely loves hunting waterfowl at Bicknell Bottoms, travels from Utah County to do so, which was kind of a fun perspective to have involved. Seth Taft is another adjacent landowner and a livestock grazer in the area. We had a representative, Kerry Cook, from the Conservation District there. Mike Christensen was another downstream water user. This was going way downstream down to Hanksville, but that Fremont River eventually gets there, and they're all interested in it. Finally, Dennis Blackburn, who's on the Wayne County Commission, and also an adjacent landowner to the property. We'll give you just a little bit of general information about the Bicknell Bottoms WMA. It's located down in Wayne County, just straight south out of Bicknell. If you don't know where Bicknell is, it's just a little bit south and east of Loa. If you don't know where Loa is, it's a little bit, quite a ways south straight south of Fish Lake, and Richfield's probably the closest big area that you would probably know. This property is about 640 acres. It was formed to secure and improve critical waterfowl and fish habitat. It was purchased with a variety of funding sources, including federal aid and other sources along the way, and we have an obligation to manage the property as such for the purposes for which it was purchased. Acquisitions took place starting as early as 1961, and the most recent one was in 2020, where we did a land exchange where we exchanged some dry ground that we had for some wetland ground that an adjacent landowner had. Hunting, fishing, and trapping are allowed on the WMA, and highly encouraged and heavily enjoyed. And then, like I discussed, we had that advisory committee, and it was formed to help advise the revision process, and they developed a goals, objectives, and strategies document. And for the rest of this presentation, I'll kind of rely heavily upon the goals, objectives, and strategies. We'll review the goals and objectives for the 5 different categories we looked at, and then drill down into some of the key strategies that are part of the proposal you guys saw at the last meeting. So the first goals and objectives we had were dealing with water and wetland management. I'll just read them off here. The management objective was to increase efficiency of water conveyance through the WMA while still maintaining waterfowl habitat characteristics and within the established regulatory frameworks provided. This was probably the number one hardest issue to work through. Like you saw in the committee, there's a lot of downstream water users. There's a lot of interest in seeing the water get through the WMA and be available for use downstream, and which is tricky because we're trying to increase that efficiency but still maintain waterfowl habitat characteristics. And at times that almost feels like an oxymoron. It's how do you do those two things at the same time? And we're hopeful that we've identified some strategies that do obtain both those goals, but it was a tricky balance to figure that out. A couple other objectives that committee developed and we've incorporated in the plan was to decrease and or mitigate for the loss of grazing on neighboring properties that's caused by the flooding of their pastures. And then lastly, under this one, is to achieve a greater understanding of water flow through Bicknell.
Well, this is bad.
So that's it. That achieving a greater understanding of water flow, that's a little bit of a tricky one because there's a lot of springs. Jim passed his phone around at the last meeting and kind of showed you guys how many springs contribute. So it's a really hard thing to measure, but we're going to do what we can to get some greater understanding of how the water flows through the bottoms. Had a waterfowl overarching goal. There's a quote there from Lynn Zubek, our waterfowl management area manager. He always is saying a duck nest is a delicate thing. Creating the right habitat and the right necessary structure for a duck to feel comfortable nesting is a tricky thing and something that is one of the objectives we want to achieve. That's expressed by achieve a diversity of age structure and habitat types within the vegetative and aquatic community to provide for the life cycle needs of the various waterfowl species that use the WMA. It's the age-old discussion about having I call it a rotating mosaic of age classes on the landscape. Having some early, new, good stuff for forage, but also having some of the old decadent rank stuff that they like to nest in, and being able to have a balance of each of those on the landscape. And then the other objective was to maintain high quality hunting opportunities for waterfowl enthusiasts. The waterfowl area is the primary reason we have the property, but there's a lot of ancillary benefits and truthfully are huge benefits. They're not just simply ancillary. Huge fisheries benefit. This quote is from our aquatics manager, Richard Hepworth. He is always stating that the river there through the Bicknell Bottoms WMA is the best 1 mile stretch of trophy trout stream in the state. And from those pictures, you can see that there really are some big fish caught in there, and it's managed as a trophy fishery. Objectives we defined for managing that is to continue to improve fish habitat and overhead cover. It's a very flat wildlife management area. And as such, it's tricky to make it all work, but we continue to work on that and try to provide improved habitat and overhead cover, and then continuing to provide a quality fishing experience on the WMA. And then the third big wildlife thing going on there is upland game, and specifically pheasant hunting. And I kind of coined this term. I believe that this is Wayne County's up and coming pheasant hotspot. I've shared the example when they started the pheasant release programs about 10 years ago throughout the state, getting people excited about pheasant hunting again. I had the opportunity to hunt pheasants down there with my son on a weekend, and pretty well felt like we had the place to ourselves and really enjoyed it, had a great hunt and had a great time. Jim Lamb, the local biologist over there right now, told me this year he went on a Wednesday, went and tried to take his family hunting on a Wednesday, and was hunting with 27 other people that were already there. And so it's grown tremendously over the last 10 years, and the interest in it has grown. And we're seeing a lot of excitement about the pheasant program and what's going on the WMA there. We identified some objectives there We want to increase and improve upland game habitat. We specifically, we have about a 20-acre part of the WMA that we manage specifically for upland game right now with tree rows, grain fields, things like that. And we want to work on increasing that. We want to protect and enhance pheasant populations to the extent possible. We'd like to see carryover and see wild birds making it. And then we also want to provide a high quality hunting opportunity for upland game enthusiasts. Then the last category that we developed some goals and objectives in is monitoring. The committee was a great committee, really excited, and they wanted to stay involved, and they wanted to have the ability to evaluate the actions that we're going to take and say yes or no, are they working, and what can we do to be adaptive when we see what's going on. Those objectives were defined as involve interested committee members in implementation of actions identified in the habitat management plan. We have several of them that are very excited to come out and help us do the work that we put in the plan. And then they also, like I said, they want to get together annually, provide an annual progress report each January to the committee and receive feedback for the needed adaptive management strategies. So drilling down beyond that, I'm not going to go into all the strategies that we listed and all of that, but here's some of the key strategies that come from those goals and objectives, the ones that we want to implement immediately, and you guys have seen in a proposal looking for funding to help get them accomplished. The first one, that vegetation management corridors, is probably the biggest thing we developed, trying to strike that balance between conveying water through the WMA and also while maintaining waterfowl habitat management characteristics. If you look at the map on the right, those vegetation management corridors are the kind of aqua blue color. What we're doing there is we're trying to connect where the water spreads out a little bit down to Pine Creek, so off of a private landowner, through us kind of creating a corridor and ultimately getting it into Pine Creek and trying to convey that a little more quickly. And then we identified also there's some major springs up on the middle western part of the property that there's some desire to also see those springs get contributed into the system and moved a little more quickly into the river channels. And so what we're gonna do to do that vegetation management is use the marsh masters that they have up at Farmington Bay and come down and we'll basically trample it down, the vegetation, and spray with Roundup to pull that out and create corridors devoid of vegetation, which will hopefully encourage water to move through those corridors and get down to the existing river channels. In addition to that, I don't have it shown on the map here, but to try to balance and continue to create the waterfowl characteristics, we also want to create some, Lynn Zubek called them potholes, but you could call them areas devoid of vegetation. So we will go in and create some 1/2 acre to 2 acre holes in the cattails where we'll do the same thing, trample it down, spray it out, and then we're hoping to have open standing water in several 4 or 5, 2 acre type ponds where there's a little more ability for them to fly in, land, and enjoy those areas, which should be good for the waterfowl and also good for the waterfowl hunters. The next key strategy we want to implement, prescribed fire, is a really cool tool to maintain vegetation in the condition that we desire through that rotating mosaic. And so we've done several fires over the last recent history. Specifically, we burned a lot of this area in the upper right about 2018, but we'd like to now implement the next phase of that and get this stuff in the kind of the middle section there. And then we want to continue to use fire on a rotational basis, trying to introduce fire upon the wetland acres once every 5 to 10 years. We talked about that there's the 20 acre upland game area, and people there show up there and hunt that, but they don't come prepared to follow the pheasants across the river out into the other areas, and because they don't have waders with them. And there's a lot of interest in seeing a footbridge across that Pine Creek. We talked a lot about that at the last meeting, and have some updates about that when we get to talking about funding, but we want to install that footbridge across Pine Creek. We want to develop some off-road parking there by the Upland Game area that's already established, and then also down on the southwest quarter, developing an additional second Upland Game release or habitat area, and it will have its own associated parking area as well, getting people off the road and into a more safe situation or being parked and utilizing the WMA. We have quite a bit of water rights on the WMA. We have over 34 cubic feet per second of water coming from Pine Creek Spring, and Bullard Spring. 23 cubic feet per second is used for fish culture at the Egan Hatchery, which is a really cool use that we're getting a huge benefit out of that, but it's also a non-consumptive use. It passes through the hatchery and it gets back into the system and it's available for downstream water users. So we're trying to emphasize that and make sure people realize we have that right and we do utilize it, but it's non-consumptive and is available to be used further downstream. We do use about 2.3 cubic feet per second to irrigate the 20-acre Upland Game area. And then the remainder of those water rights are in non-use due to the presence of whirling disease in Pine Creek and the threat that creates to the Egan Hatchery. If we were to irrigate uphill from that hatchery, there's a potential to introduce whirling disease into the hatchery. And so we're working through that, trying to sort out if there's some other places we can try to use those rights. But for right now, they're in non-use to protect the water rights, but also to protect the hatchery from whirling disease. Last slide here, just a little bit of a talk about grazing. The committee determined, and we agree with them, that probably prescribed fire and herbicide use are the preferred methods for vegetation management, but we did want to keep grazing in the plan as a tool that's optionally available. There are times and places where it can make sense. We even talked at length as a committee about, what does grazing for a waterfowl management area look like to be beneficial for waterfowl, and it would be something where it's a high intensity, short duration, once in 5 to 10 years type of situation. And the grazers on the committee said they recognized that and agreed that would be the right way to do it for waterfowl, but they had no interest in doing it. So it's not in there as a primary plan to do, but we did leave it in there as an option so that if the right place and right situation were to come up, we would have it. And then the other aspect to grazing, and we do this with the majority of our WMAs, there's a program called the Grass Bank program where if you declare a property as eligible for grass bank, it can be used in trade for other conservation actions or emergency forage. And we've done that twice in the last 5 years on Bicknell bottoms through the drought and some of the emergency actions needed. We were able to help in 2018. We provided some grazing for about 100 head of cattle for a month in between September and October in 2018. Then we received the same request in 2021 and did end up putting out a solicitation to see if we could help somebody out. But ultimately, I think the monsoons and some other factors came into play, and nobody ended up bidding to do that. With that, that's the plan. You guys have got the document and kind of goes over some of the key strategies. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to listen now.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions from the group about this management plan?
Gary, this is Randy. Just a quick question, and I must have missed this. Is that the upland area down there out of that 640 acres? There's only 20 acres that are actual upland?
So there's 20 acres that we actively manage for upland. So it's like we're there. We're planting grain every year. We have shrub rows. We have tree lines and everything. So it's 20 acres that's actively and definitely managed specifically for upland game. But the pheasants get out and get into the marsh across the whole thing. And so when it comes to hunting, if you came prepared and you have your waders, there's a whole 640 acres available for upland game hunting.
Okay, cool.
I think part of one of the goals with the footbridge, Gary, as well, is to have it more accessible for upland.
Absolutely.
Gary, I've got a question for you. This is Justin.
Okay.
In the management plan, it talked a lot about hunting and the purpose of the property, and then in other areas it talked about deer use. On some of our WMAs, we will have archery deer hunts, but not very many of them. Is this a place that we would want to explore that, or are people hunting deer with archery anyways in this area?
Jim, are you still on here to where you could address that?
They hunt deer and elk there with all weapon types as they're available. The deer and elk use it almost every day, the upland area.
Okay, and it's allowed? We allow it in our guidebook?
I sure hope so.
Well, I do too. It just wasn't clear in the plan if it was allowed or not, so that's all.
That's a good question. We can look into clarify that and specifically making sure, since it sounds like that's how it is used, that we have identified it as one of those waterfowl management areas that it is allowed. So.
Okay. We used to list all those areas in the big game rule in our 657-5, and I looked and we just say now according to the guidebook. And so I think if we wanted to add it, great, but I wasn't sure the conflicts it might pose. And I'm not advocating we do it. I'm just saying if it makes sense. It was just more of a question. So
I have a question. Why are you wearing a tie?
I got a question. Why is your screen off, Jim? What are you wearing?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gary.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, maybe Gary and Jim, if you can look into that, mule deer and elk use and whether, how huntable that population is, that'd be great. It's included in that list if we need to.
Just for your information, the deer and elk primarily use that upland area at night. They come in there and feed, and then they're usually gone first thing in the morning. So the hunting is not a lot of hunting, but it occurs.
Okay.
And Gary, this is Randy. One more time. I wanted to thank you. Gary took some time to talk with me the other day because I had some concerns about the Bicknell bottoms enhancements. I still have concerns about trying to push water through wetland area faster, but it looks like we have some safeguards in there. And I'm just confirming, I just pulled up the Bicknell bottoms in the WR database, and it looks like that has been changed to a walk-in bridge only. Is that correct?
Correct. That's I don't know if we want to go into those details right now or not, but I mean, frankly, when we got to that meeting last time, we were like just a day or two after getting the estimate from the engineers, and we were trying to swallow it at that time too. Since then, we've been able to talk with a few more people, and we found a guy in Gunnison that builds these bridges, and he said, I can build one for $17,500, then you got to get delivered and installed. And so we've revised. It's a very good bridge. There's pictures in there. We can get an ATV across there. So, and we decided an ATV will be enough to go try what we could try over there, and we don't need to have it to the extent of getting a tractor across.
I'll be honest, that makes me feel better. It helps relieve some of my concerns that I had there. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I think we're happy about it too. We were struggling to swallow a $200,000 bridge, and $30,000 sounds way better to us too. So.
No, good question, and yeah, 30,000 does sound a lot better. Any other questions about Bicknell?
No, just one last thing, Gary. On the Upland Game guidebook, just see page 35 for Bicknell bottoms and give that some attention. So
okay, we can do that.
All right. Okay, and I'll just mention before we move on, Gary, appreciate all the effort. I know it's been kind of a tough haul and trying to balance, community desires and what the objectives are of the property, and you've done a good job, and appreciate your efforts there. Okay.
And we normally with those HMPs, if the council has any comments or feedback on the document itself, maybe we'll give another week to look at that and see if you can get that back to us if you have any other comments. We'd appreciate that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on and talk about the Habitat Council budget. And who's going to start with that?
You want to maybe share your screen?
Or maybe if give us, especially for those who are new here, primer of how this is going to go and what to expect before we jump in.
Yeah, so just to kind of start out with, I thought we'd just maybe talk a little bit about the budget. There's not a lot to talk about, but maybe just kind of discuss where it happened this year. So normally our budget's around 3.5, 3.3 million, and that's money that's collected from license sales essentially. Part of that money is put into the Habitat Council to do restoration work. This last year, we got an appropriation from the legislature for another 700,000. So that brings us up to just over 4 million that we're able to put on projects for this upcoming year.
That's one-time money. So just to spend out our account that kind of been building, and then we didn't have approval to spend that, so we added an additional 700,000 to our 3.4, so we're at 4.1-ish.
So next year it'll revert back to what it had been before. This year we'll have that one time to spend it out. So as you've seen on the spreadsheet, we have the amount up there that's available. And then we also have what's currently being requested right now. So we're just over 4 million in the available funding, and requested we're at about 4.4 million.
Do you want to put my screen up there so it's bigger?
Sure.
When I'm looking through the email, I noticed some rankings. Where do those rankings come from? Who ranked them? I was just wondering.
So there's a lot of different ways we rank stuff. So one is there's a WRI rank. So if they go through the WRI process, they receive a rank from that group. Each of our 5 regions have their own individual ranking group, and so they rank them individually from their ranking perspective. It's kind of a ground up type process, so the biologists, the folks out on the ground, are ranking them according to their region. And so on that ranking, there's a score. A high score is the better score. So I think the total possible is like 0.70 or something. So if it has a higher score, they're ranked higher in the region.
There's specific criteria. It's not just somebody throwing a number on.
Okay.
For different portions of the proposal, they get different points.
So Tyler and I, we helped develop that ranking sheet. We can provide that out to the regions, and then individual rankers in that region use that criteria that we develop. Cool.
You want to see what those criteria are more closely, you can go to watershed.utah.gov. And if you go down towards the bottom, that's this WRI project prioritization spreadsheet or score sheet. So.
And I don't know that we have it on this spreadsheet, but when we go to like the conservation permit meeting, we also request a ranking from all of our biologists to rank species, so like mule deer, elk, bighorn sheep, pronghorn moose. And we ask them for all the projects in that region, both WRI and Habitat Council, to provide them a rank of 1 to their whatever. And so they provide that rank as well. That's probably not on the spreadsheet, but that's what I use to help create the agenda for our big game meeting, for instance. I use a lot of those rankings to say, yep, we need to bring this project here to this meeting because they're ranked high.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of different rankings that are kind of going on in different subgroups, I guess.
So maybe one thing that you could do to clarify this a little bit is on the one ranking column, it says low, medium, not ranked, high, whatnot. Those are WRI.
They're also WRI rankings. So along with their score, we also ask them to put like a cutoff of what's high, what's medium, what's low. And that's what that is.
Say that again, or what?
So with the WRI rank, with the actual number that they have, we also ask them to provide a cutoff of their high ranks, their medium ranks, their low ranks.
And not ranked means?
Just means it didn't go through that WRI process.
Okay.
Means it went through either the conservation permit process or it's only coming to Habitat Council. And so it didn't receive that rank.
So the WRI process is a separate process. I don't know if you all are familiar, how familiar you are with that, but it goes through its own ranking criteria and group and funding meeting. And this is kind of where we're able to bolster up some of those projects that maybe from Habitat Council point of view are really important to us and maybe rank lower in the WRI side of things. We can make those the funding hold for those. I don't know, Tyler, anything else you want to say about that?
I think it's important to note that this council doesn't see all of the WRI projects. There's just simply not enough time to bring everything here. And so there is kind of a first cut that takes place that Daniel and Eric and Allison kind of make. I know that anything that's on a WMA typically makes it to the council no matter where it's ranked. But the last meeting that we had, there's so much going on in the state through WRI that benefits big game that we typically look at the projects that are most likely to get support from WRI. And I think those are the projects that you see, but there's certainly more out there.
But by having that column there, we're able to see, how the other group rank those and how important they are, and whether or not we feel like we should commit more funding to those, or a lot of them, they're $1 million projects, and we're putting 20 or 30 grand on them.
But I think it's important as a council. You mentioned that you guys spend some time on the WRI website. I think it's important to look through all of those proposed projects. There's 300 plus proposed projects on there. If you don't see those appear on the agenda and there's something that you want to hear, certainly speak up, and I think we can get that project presented to the council and consider funding for it.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. It's part of the learning process, especially for those who are new on the council. And when we get into the next cycle, you can, the council can see what we want to see on there that are all part of that system, and maybe pick the ones that are geared towards this kind of funding. But if you miss something and you want to see it on the list and review it and consider it for funding, then we can surely add it. So, okay.
So the only other thing I'll kind of add is you can see the breakout for each of your different categories. I'll just kind of mention that is kind of done by code right now. So like the waterfowl and the upland have an actual percentage in code that identifies those amounts, and the big game and the sport fish are then just divided after that. So the waterfowl is 4%, and the upland is 12%, and then the other two are just split out by revenue balance.
I could just make a comment on that. It's kind of my annual gripe. I think at the time those percentages were put in code, it was a different era. There was a time when South Jordan and West Farmington and Westlake were full of pheasant hunters out in the fields on the opening day of the pheasant season. And, now for all intents and purposes, just about the only pheasant hunting that takes place in the state is put and take. It's just, I think they're basically an anachronism. And if you look at the way the number of upland game hunters are counted these days, the way I understand it, maybe somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty misleading. You count, if somebody hunts forest grouse and they hunt pheasants and they hunt chukar, they're counted as 3 hunters. If they also hunt cottontail, they're counted as 4 hunters, morning dove 5 hunters. So the number of 35,000 upland game hunters is, probably a very inflated number. So, if you compare that to, I think the division estimates there are 28,000 waterfowl hunters in the state. And, we don't count somebody as 3 waterfowl hunters because they also, they shoot a mallard and a pintail and a teal, or, a duck and a goose or something like that. So I think there needs to be a reevaluation of these percentages, and perhaps some initiative by the division to suggest that those percentages be readjusted based on the current reality of hunter numbers in the state. And, I know that creates, maybe some angst among the upland game hunters. But the reality is a lot of their money is going to, help support big game projects. Most of the projects that have upland game money associated with them are primarily big game projects and probably ought to be, pretty much funded by the big game money. So That's my gripe, I guess. Aside from the fact that the WMAs, I think, are just by their very nature, far more capital intensive than, any other type of project in the state.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I'll add is a lot of the waterfowl, it is matched with PR. So what we see through here is just a 25% match. So there is a lot of other money that's coming with that than just the Habitat Council amount. But Eric and I have had some conversations. Our Title 23 code's probably going to be opened up this next legislative session. And Eric and I have kind of talked about the waterfowl amount that we'll, I think, can be reevaluating that. What that ends up being, we're not sure at this point, but likely we'll make some changes.
Probably going to lower it.
Right. Well, maybe there's a way to do it where it doesn't get into a situation of feeling like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because that's not. I come here and I say this every year. It's really inspiring to come to these meetings and to see what the division's doing. And I don't mean to denigrate, the work that's put into all of the Habitat Council projects and everything by the division. It's really a wonderful thing. But you can't help but see year after year where less than half of the waterfowl projects have a chance to be funded, and we basically have to default to just the things that basically just keep the lights on kind of projects. And there probably needs to be some reevaluation of maybe how we do this in some way. If somebody's got some far more creative than I am, where we can come up with a system that kind of reflects the real needs within which category, because right now, the waterfowl WMAs are the most accessible hunting opportunity that 70% of the population of the state has. So,
well, I appreciate those thoughts, and like Daniel mentioned, those percentages are being evaluated now. We'll kind of see how that shakes out. And,
I'm curious though, Jack, what percentage do you think would be a fair percentage for waterfowl?
The way I would think of doing it actually is maybe to combine waterfowl and upland and just have it be one fund. And then, when you're doing a chaining project, something like that, there really is conceived of as a big game project, but we, throw 10% of the money into the waterfowl pot or the upland game pot. Just have those be what they really are, and that is upland game projects. Because, I know there are some of them that probably really are done to benefit forest grouse and cottontail rabbits and whatever else. But the reality is the motivation for those projects is so we can have more deer and elk.
Yeah, but if they're directly affecting bird populations and rabbit populations, I don't see a problem with the upland guy throwing money in them. I mean,
Sage grouse is the
sage grouse and box elder.
Yeah.
You go out there and that's gonna affect big game more than anything, but it's big for the sage grouse. So.
Yeah, there are projects like that, but I think there are also projects where it's just, somebody says, well, there are rabbits out there, and so we had 10% of one game money or something. So maybe, maybe there must be some readjustment based on, kind of what the real needs are within each category. Whether that's combining upland and waterfowl, or whether that's readjusting the percentages, or maybe coming up with something else. I don't know, but I just know it's as you guys know, it's a frustration with me every year. So.
Randy?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm off on a little bit of that. I've sat in on an awful lot of upland game meetings. I haven't heard that double and triple counting thing before. Maybe that's accurate, but I'm not familiar with that. And to group them together, I know it's just a proposal, and there's probably things to think about where things can be done differently. But do you know what? One of the greatest things I love seeing that I'm able to help pay for a little bit with some of the upland is these aspen projects. Yeah, they're going to impact deer and stuff a lot, but the only true growth area in the state for hunting is upland. Upland has the ability to truly bring in more hunters. Big game's maxed out. we've only got so many permits and so many animals. Waterfowl's pretty maxed out, or it appears to me when I'm out there. Upland, I would be very hesitant to suggest rolling the two funds together because they're different. They just impact different areas. Do I hate seeing everything bled off a little bit? A nickel and dime here, a nickel and dime there on some upland projects. Some of them I didn't completely agree with, but most of them do have an impact on upland game. And upland game is the one area that we can grow in the state of Utah. So, again, I'll do some research, but I've never heard that concept of one hunter. Like me, I hunt every upland species. So I've never heard that I'm counted as 4 people, 4 hunters.
Yeah, it was data provided to me by the division.
Okay, well, I'll follow up on it. That's interesting because I've never heard that. And I just got done helping with the upland plan for the state, and that never came up anywhere. But I would be very loath to, everybody's going to be loath to give up any money in their pot. But so I'll do some more research, but appreciate it. But I think upland has its place. If you merge the two together, upland's going to disappear. I mean, we don't have any other funds. The wildlife areas have federal funds that are available to them. We're not going to get other funds for the upland projects. It's just not going to happen.
All right. I appreciate, these are good thoughts, and like I say, lots of options are being considered, at least from my direct chain of command at the director's office. And now we have somebody here, at least today, also from our director's office, and he's hearing this too, I think. So I know I've had some of these discussions with Mike Canning. I'm on the Habitat side, but it's on our radar, I guess. And so there's lots of options to consider, and again, whatever we decide might be changed by a legislator, so who knows how it's going to shake out. So, all right. Okay, next.
So, I mean, I think that's about all I have for the budgets. Of course, you can see how they're broke out right now. We did kind of just throw a quick percentage in there, kind of see where they're all ending up. I don't know how you want to move forward at this point with if there's projects, individual ones you want to talk about or not. I did have Allison highlight in yellow there under the WI column, essentially projects that are probably medium ranked through the WI system, which likely means that we're not going to get funding down to those projects. So right now we have a bunch of them that we put like 10 or 20,000 on them, but they're asking for like another, chunk of money. That's likely not going to get funded. So that's one conversation we can have. There is, do we want to either one, fully fund that project, because that would make it, go forward, or do we want to redirect any monies that we currently have allocated to those projects to somewhere else? I don't know, Tyler, do you have any other comments or strategies you want to mention about that or not? But
I mean, I think if there's been discussions that have taken place outside of the meeting with your groups, and there's projects that you want to take off the list, any big swings, maybe that's the first thing my suggestion would be that we do is hit those projects, and that'll kind of affect a lot of the percentages. And then as Daniel said, there's a lot of WRI applications. I think it's kind of the last thing that we look at. And just looking at your list quickly, those 2 projects that are on the boulders, I think are probably 2 that if we can somehow find a way to put more money there by kicking off some others, those would be 2 that I would target.
And they already have some sportsman's dollars with it.
We've kind of focused a little bit on the boulders over the last couple of years. We've had a lot of effort in NEPA and pre-NEPA down there, and we found a way to fund at least one of those boulder projects, and that, both of them are phase 2s. So that's just my thoughts initially.
Did you update the Bicknell budget?
Yeah, we did.
And if there are projects that we want to, like, say, we're not going to fund, we can always throw them down on what we call our contingency list, meaning that they're still approved if money becomes available, but we don't fund them with money. So, we don't directly deny them. We'll put them on the contingency list in case some additional funds come up at some point too.
And then I think, Eric, you want to mention that you've been restricted to 0 over allocation this year, because we have over allocated in the past.
So do we just jump in then with projects we have an issue with funding wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna start somewhere. So,
Well, on the central region, we could go to that then. The Utah Lake access, I would, I think from a waterfowl perspective, and I'm not saying these aren't great projects and they aren't needed, but that one would consume in and of itself, I think, something like 60 or 70% of the total waterfowl budget. So I just don't, that's got to be a no from my perspective.
They did do a breakout on that one. If there is something you want to partially fund, they had about 5 different locations with different amounts to make different locations happen. So we just threw that in there real quick in case, because we figured this discussion was going to come up with that project, especially for the waterfowl component, because it was such a large amount of it. So that's one discussion we can have. There's also the discussion of changing the percentages on that one too. Moving them from, more over to sport fish or something versus waterfowl, change those amounts, or like you say, we can just altogether not fund it select as well. So.
Yeah, I think, it's a great thing, but just from a waterfowl perspective, I think it's probably unaffordable.
any other thoughts on that one?
I think for now, bumping it down to contingency is probably a good first move, and then we can come back to individual pieces of it if we want to later.
The other central project is the Jordan River Rehab.
Jack, is this the one they've been talking about for 40 years?
The Jordan River.
It just sounded like they had committee after committee after committee and never done anything, or is...
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. It's just the same problem every year, and that is there's just not much waterfowl money, and so you've got to be looking at some of these bigger ticket projects to try to balance the budget. Otherwise, you don't have the money to road-known carp and spray phragmites and repair the dikes.
Gotcha.
So the Jordan River Rehab would be another one.
Is this one you talked about?
Oh, down below it.
Yeah, the waterfowl component I think was $17,000. What I had written down.
Yeah.
So South Valley Jordan River.
So it's a great project. I think it would be a great community amenity. It's just, we've got on the waterfowl end $268,000 deficit to try to deal with. So.
It is also one that was a lower ranked high project that needs quite a bit more money.
This is the one that we talked about, that I was hoping there would be some sovereign lands money to help with it. And I think I was under the impression that some of that sovereign lands money could go to the Jordan River. I think you were right in that meeting. You mentioned that it had to go back to the Great Salt Lake. So I would like to see, Forestry Fire put some more funding into that one, given that they've got a huge pot of money now.
Yeah.
So I agree with kicking that one down as well.
Then in the northeastern region, the Perriette wetlands. And, I love this project every single year. Every year I've been here, it's come up, and it just seems like such a neat place and everything. But again, it's a bigger ticket item. I think the waterfowl component's like $31,500. So when things are, larger dollar numbers with a limited waterfowl budget, they just, it's easy to move them out to try to balance the budget. So that would be one I would favor moving down.
Challenge with this one is we asked them to come back with a better budget, and they did.
What wetlands is this, Jack? Where is it located?
It's kind of out in the basin, almost south of the basin, and it just seems like a neat spot and everything, but if that's basically for the northeastern region waterfowl money, that's would be more than half of the northeastern region. You'd basically have to X out everything else in the northeastern region, to put it in context.
Yeah, and it ranked low enough that if we funded it, we'd have to fund it for the full 84,000 anyway. So it's 84,000 per structure. I mean, this is one I feel like at some point we've got to figure out a way to fund it, just because we have we put a structure in? Have we done one already, or
No.
I don't think so. I think we paid for
engineering.
and we engaged with the heavy equipment crew to bring the cost down. So
Last year it was their number one ranked project in the region, but this year it didn't rank very well.
get through WRA.
What caused that change?
I mean, we changed the rankings, but I wouldn't think it would change it that much. So maybe that's just a needing to adapt to the new ranking strategy and hope it comes back better through WRA next year. So I'm okay with that.
Then the next one I had on the list is the southern region. I don't know how it's pronounced. Wichita Lake Hydrology. The waterfowl components 22,650.
Didn't rank very well.
I actually really like this one. I think this one has some good benefits as well. But again, didn't rank well through WRI.
Yeah, it may be great, but once again, it alone. If you take out the Bicknell bottoms, it alone is probably like 30 or 40% of the whole southern region waterfowl.
Let me take a look at this one. It seems like I like this one. Maybe we could adjust some percentages on this.
Yeah, this would be the time to do that if you're up for that.
I'm trying to remember. It seems my memory on it, it seems like I liked it, but it's been a little bit. So I'm just pulling it up and looking at it on my side real quick. Oh no, I remember this one. I like this project.
Yeah, I think it's a great project. I just think, from a waterfowl perspective, it's.
Oh no, I get it. No, I get it. And this is, and I've got a little bit of money to still play with. What if we adjusted some percentages here? Let's see.
How about if we put 15% of that 30% going to waterfowl, kicked it to upland, and then 15% over to sport fish? Or no, not sport fish, non-game wildlife.
I would be good with that. And I think that would still, I would still be in the black on that. So I would be fine with that.
Change that to 65.
Yeah.
No waterfowl at all in there?
No waterfowl.
And up the non-game sport or non-game to 35.
No, I think about it, that doesn't really help us. So maybe.
You keep 10% waterfowl. I mean, is it
I mean, we still have a problem in waterfowl, so maybe give all of that 30% to Upland Game. So that would take Upland Game up to 80%. It would be 80% upland, 20% non-game wildlife, which comes out of big game.
Non-game does.
You didn't know that? That might have changed your
I knew
opinion.
the
on projects.
WMAs did.
Your predecessor did not like that at all.
Can we, you wouldn't put 20% in, Jack?
You know, I mean, it's just a question of, you know, if the account's bankrupt, it's bankrupt. I mean, it's, you know, there's no money, there's no money. I think it's a wonderful thing, but you know, when you look at the other projects, half of them have maintenance in the title, and you know, you've got to do that stuff because you got to, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point of the conversation where the percentages don't really match what should be on the ground. We're just trying to balance columns now.
I'm gonna have to call Mike on that one.
Where there's places Sportfish can take more is where we're gonna.
Yeah, Sportfish is flush right now, where everybody else is in trouble. I don't know that that's a Sportfish project. Got anything else, Jack?
Yeah, you know, you're going to hate me for this one, but you know, we're still 62,000 in the red on waterfowl, so I would say the Bicknell Bottoms committee enhancements become unaffordable.
And that is one that I would kick that 40% to Sportfish. So I'd make Sportfish 60% of that.
I think by the light in Ben's eyes, he's gonna go fish it, so. We've seen them pictures.
What do you call it? The best 1 mile
stretch
of trophy fishing in the state.
He's never been to Lagoon. They have really good fishing there.
I will say on that one is a high priority from our director's office.
I feel like it is
and,
too.
and we need to provide some additional support there, and whether we adjust it over to, you know, Sportfish to bring that waterfowl bill down a little bit, that probably is fine. But we have to essentially fund this one this year.
I agree.
Well, so are we under a mandate then to make everything in the black here? I mean, there's still like projects we need to cut from waterfowl, or how?
I think you're good. I think we'll be happy with that.
Still, we haven't had our final like everything funding meeting, and I think it all kind of gets, you know, a lot of it washes out there, and
You and the rest,
figure it out. But I think at this point, I would probably
We'll put it all through on.
That's all I had on
projects that we're gonna put some more money in.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. So
We'll talk about that.
yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for spending the time.
I got a question. Would it make sense to look at Sportfish now?
Hey, I was just thinking, Justin, we're at 100% right now. We can call it a meeting.
We're not in the red anymore.
Overall, but
100.2. No, I think.
But if we want to try and fund those other projects more, then we need to find some more money somewhere else.
I do think we kind of want, from the Sportfish perspective, to bring forward at least a concept that's been discussed a little bit internally, and that's this Navajo Lake project. That's a high priority project for us. That's a division-owned dam that perpetually fails. So it's really kind of, unfortunately, sits largely on the division's responsibility to pay for getting that work done. And one of their big funding sources, the Department of, or whatever, the Office of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism, or whatever it's called, isn't providing their $200,000. And Blue Ribbon's also short on money to come up with this project. So I think from a Sportfish perspective, we would like to see us use, you know, that 300,000 or whatever surplus and really throw it hard at that project, get that funded to get that completed.
So take out the Still Blue Ribbon not funding.
That would be my preference. I think we could probably tighten the ropes a little on Blue Ribbon and come up with some funding, but that 158's more than Blue Ribbon can handle.
Wasn't that Blue Ribbon's #1 project?
It was, yeah, very highly ranked for Blue Ribbon.
Well, what do you think Blue Ribbon can put into it?
I think Blue Ribbon could do 100,000. If we go above that, it really starts meaning Blue Ribbon funds nothing but this project.
So then to fully fund that, what would that do to?
We would need to come up with the 216 or 200,000. The Office Outdoor Recreation isn't funding.
And that's included in the Habitat Council now, right?
Is that right? Is it?
Yeah, I agree with
Originally,
that.
we just had a split 158 for both of them. We ended up changing that to just 158 Blue Ribbon, and then we dumped the rest into Habitat Council, so it's being reflected there.
What if your other partners pull out funding support?
I think it was just that one partner. And I think the reason they pulled out is just not the type of project they usually fund. It's usually kind of recreation enhancement at sites, not fixing a dam, more or less.
Okay. I mean, those funding decisions haven't come out yet, so you were basically told you're ineligible. Right?
Yeah.
And that office / division might change over the years. If they figure out they spend a bunch of money and stuff has to be maintained at some point. We'll see. Okay. So, aquatics, fisheries is still not in the red at all.
You guys got anything else?
I think maybe the only other one, this would help from a Blue Ribbon perspective, but there's a Blacksmith Fork project coming out of the northern region. We've talked a little with those guys about phasing that project because they're looking at the reconstruction of 2 diversions. Perhaps taking 1 diversion this year and doing another diversion another year. I don't know what that would be funding wise, but it would be less obviously if you're trying to divide that.
Was that one where they had a whole bunch of other funding sources?
I don't know. They may have.
They're adding almost 160 from Blue Ribbon.
That was for both diversions. Now you just want to do 1.
I think that would be the hope, to do 1 this year and 1 the next year. It's mostly in-kind stuff. It's the other donations.
I like that project because you see the Blacksmith Fork dry up from there to the Logan River.
Yeah.
Which is killing fish every year. I mean, he mentioned it pretty much the last few years. It's a puddle here and a puddle there. That's hard on
Probably not
fish.
going to be any better this year, unfortunately.
I mean, the other big funding source on that, it's not going to come through us, but it's the BOR money that's associated with that. It sounds like they've got already obtained.
Yeah, I think they've obtained it. I think there's enough of a deadline on that they could potentially spread this.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to just cut it in half then? You want to cut both Blue Ribbon and Habitat Council in half?
Well, if you look at their budget, they've got the Hiram diversion and the Nibley diversion. The Hiram diversion looks like they're only asking 50,000 for that one, and then the rest would be the Nibley diversion.
What is the through other, like 1.7 million? What is that?
That's the BOR money.
Oh, that's okay. That's the BOR.
Cutting that half might help my crew that this might be over allocated this fall, so it might help our schedule. Depending on what else gets funded this cycle.
It's a medium project. I mean, we need to scale it back. That's fine.
So that, should we just fund it at 50,000 then? Is that what you're saying, Eric?
I'm just saying, looking at their budget, if we did one diversion, only 1 diversion, there's the option of doing the Hiram diversion, which they've got budgeted at 50,000. And then everything else they have listed is the Nibley diversion. So
I'd like to hear anybody from the region who knows about this. If we give this 50,000 only, is that going to be useful or what?
I'm just reading a comment on the Bureau money. It looks like it's tied to the Hiram Canal, not necessarily the Nibley diversion. So the 1.2 million of BOR appears to be for the Hiram, not the Nibley.
as far as I can tell.
And it sounds like the Nibley still needs to be engineered. I wonder if that's what we ought to do is
Pay for the engineering.
50,000 for the Nibley, or 50,000 for the Hiram, and then 73.5 to engineer the Nibley. Is anybody from the region on to talk about this or not?
Sorno's on there, and Daniel is too.
Yeah, I can address part of it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sorno.
I was only involved in the very initial portions of it, so I'm not sure where it's ending up right now. But they were going to just redo an entire diversion in a very non-fish friendly way. So Clint and Jim Dorito and I kind of stepped in and met with the irrigation company to see if we could make it more fish friendly. And they've amassed a whole bunch of partners and are, just a portion of it. And I think it's a pretty important project as far as the region's priorities are concerned with aquatics. Not putting words in Chris's mouth or anything, but the portion that we were doing is pretty minimal compared to the rest of it. The problem is that it's on a private bridge, and they've secured, as far as I know, they've secured permission from the landowner, or he's going to abandon it, something like that. Clint would know for sure, but it is a pretty important project on the Blacksmith Fork, and I couldn't rank it versus other projects. I'm not as familiar with those, but I know in my dealings with this one, it was one of the first times where we did have on-site visits with the actual engineering company doing the work for the water users, and they were willing to listen and see the aquatic resource point of view, and just pretty much agreed, yeah, that makes sense. We should probably go that direction with it.
All right. Thanks, Sorno.
Yep.
In the past, and a lot of times, like Tyler was saying, having a hard time doing engineering and implementation at the same time. I don't know if Sorno can address that or not, but
I think that's because some of their funding's up against a use it or lose it time constraint. So we kind of had to snowball everything in and get it done as fast as we could.
So if we don't give it funding this year, it'll get built, but won't have any fish benefit?
It will probably get built regardless, but it will not have only fish benefits not available to it. It'll be detrimental to fish passage, and probably entrain those fish that are going down and put them in canals and ditches and fields.
Sorno, is that, so we need to fund both diversions or just one of them?
What I missed which I'm basically talking about the Nibley one.
Okay.
and I think that's essentially the one we're talking about as well.
So that it wasn't my understanding there was two diversions there.
There's a Hiram diversion and a Nibley diversion. A lot of the BOR money looks like it's for the Hiram diversion, and they're asking Habitat Council for $50,000 for the Hiram diversion, and then the rest of the money is all for the Nibley for both engineering and implementation.
Okay, I wasn't involved in the Hiram portion of it. I was only there for the Nibley one. Is the Hiram one physically up at their power plant?
No.
Or is it just two sources coming off a similar area?
Similar area is what I would guess.
Because then the Nibley one would be downstream of Hiram. So I don't see how that could.
They're both downstream from where you cross the Blacksmith Fork as you're going into Blacksmith Fork Canyon. They're both downstream below the Millville WMA to the west. I'm not sure where the Nibley one flows, but I know the Hiram one flows along Hollow Road.
Okay, that I wasn't involved in the Hiram one. 'Cause I don't think they're on the same footprint.
So
Would it be worth us getting Clint on the phone?
You could try, but he's in Rich County today.
I mean, how much do you guys want to do that? Do you want to just shunt that 159,250 of Blue Ribbon over to Habitat Council?
Well, I think we could work something out here where I don't think it's that much in terms of dollars, but if we shunt it, say, well, my overage right now is 92,000. I could probably part with a little bit more, making that what we would shunt a little bit less than 92,000. But if we can do that, that gets us in a place where I would be able to cover basically from Blue Ribbon all the kind of jointly funded projects at the amount that's proposed from there.
Okay. Well, give us a number then.
We shunt 75,000 over. Probably get me where I need to be.
I've got a question about a project. The two above that, the 6089 on line 73. I thought we tabled that one, that medium ring project on the frag stuff. I really liked the project, but I wasn't sure if it was going to get fully funded. Do we remember on that?
Is this the refuge? Yeah, this is the refuge. I did talk to her, and the issue was whether or not she thought she could get it done this fiscal year, and she's worked out a way to get it done this year. Okay, that's why we were going to table it. Okay, so I think it's back on
She
now.
came back and represented too. She
Oh, she
wasn't
did?
there to present it the first time.
Okay.
And
She did a good job.
Yeah, she did the second time.
It's good to work with.
All right, thanks. I wasn't there for that second meeting.
So the question on that then, is it gonna get the other 25,000? No.
It's not, but I think she can take the 25,000 from this council and do good work with it. And I've got her talking with our folks up there to hopefully combine their contracts and efforts a little better.
I do love that they're proposing work on the refuge. I think that's awesome.
Well, the fact that they're really recognizing that they've got some huge phragmites problems they haven't been addressing for a long time. It's a good thing.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to support is finally having someone there who's proactive and getting them some funding at least. And then what I asked her to do for next year is to combine this with the big Phragmites project, and it'll get ranked high like Towns does.
Okay.
So you're saying WRI is not gonna fund that 25?
Not this year, no. It's just too low ranked.
My personal opinion is I feel like that needs to be funded fully and done this year where she worked her butt off. Didn't know what she was doing, presenting. She didn't know she was presenting the first time. She come back, she nailed it.
Yeah.
It's important to me to work with the wildlife refuge. So if we could find funds somewhere else to cover that 25, that'd be great. And I'm not a waterfowl guy.
Yeah, waterfowl's the hardest money to find.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is one that we could talk to Troy about using like SFW Expo funds or something along those lines, separate of this process.
Yeah, he'd probably be really open to that.
With the working relationship, it's gonna start here, I think you'd be all over it.
Maybe we'll call them at a break or something.
I like that idea as well. And then, like I said, next year, if she combines with the big Phragmites, it's pretty much guaranteed to get WRA money.
I do know on the big Phragmites, they do overlap the aerial spraying of that, but we did get word that they just pulled their 20,000 that they have for the aerial spraying out of the big Phragmite project. I don't know, maybe that would be either. So
Who pulled that?
What's that?
Who pulled that?
Jam.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of weird. So on the big Phragmites project, for years, they've always been part of the aerial spraying component of the big frag project that Chad Fanny brings to us.
Troy.
And then they've never been part of like the Marsh Masters, which is part of the big. And so they propose their own separate ones this year for just the groundwork. We wanted to do both of them together eventually, but so yeah, but we did just get word that they pulled their 20,000 off the big frag project.
I wonder what the difference in acreage would be if it was fully funded versus what Habitat Council just funds.
Well, I wonder if she can get it all done too. When I was talking to her, we were talking about just the 25,000. So if we doubled that before we talked to Troy, we probably ought to make sure that Jack can handle the whole 50 this year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so that one we'll consider some more things, so. Okay, what was another one? Do you have another one?
No, that's the only one that stuck out. And I know we're done with Waterfowl, but that was the only other Waterfowl one I had.
We're almost right at 10:30. Take a break for 10 minutes and maybe make a couple phone calls even.
Yeah.
Take a break and work some more.
Yep. Okay, 10-minute break. We'll be back at
Anybody have Jen's number or
10:40.
I might. Let me see if you put it on right. Yeah, I'll
I
call
get
Jen.
you.
I'll call her and just make sure, and then we'll call Troy.
Daniel, you want this on you?
So am I wrong about the Upland Game? point is to sport fish.
See if Randy's on.
You guys have anything else?
Have you unmuted, Danny?
Yeah, nothing else.
So are you ready for?
Randy,
big game
are
announcement
you
of
on?
your money?
Yeah, we can do that.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, that's one. I don't know if that's. Randy back.
Yeah, Jack, I've got it pulled up on page 6 of the Upland Game annual report. It's about 35,516. It does break it out like who's a crow hunter, who's a dove hunter, who's a grouse hunter.
Yeah.
What did we decide on the Blacksmith Fork and Edgley one?
To fund the whole thing.
What's that?
To fund the whole thing. Just move some of the blue ribbon over to sport fish.
Yeah, it's, you have to really capitalize on those opportunities when.
I remember there being a lot of,
or whoever UDOT's in there, they're doing stuff, and that's your only opportunity, so you gotta try to throw money at it.
I'll still bet you $10 it doesn't get built next fiscal year.
The engineering.
Yeah.
You're only gonna go $10 on that?
That's just my standard bet when we're in a public meeting.
Randy, you back on yet? Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm here.
Nope, no problem. All right. Okay. We're back up and running. Any other projects that members of the council want to talk about?
And I got a lot of big game changes I want to make. Now
Okay,
that we're
we wanna-
spending sports fish money on big game.
Curtis Randy sold a bird dog project, it's a big game project. It was legit, but. Okay, go ahead.
So I think the best way to do this is just to go to the top of the list, and on that column T with the Habitat Council request, Allison's put some notes in there. Just kind of go down through those. So West Jordan Big Bend, I think that one, I'm okay with that one. That one's not coming out of the game anyways. Stewart Lake, I think that's fully funded with that 12.5. Duchesne River, one that what does it need? Well, how much?
It needs another 15.5.
So this is one that I think we ought to increase to the full 29,000.
So what does that do with the?
That takes more sport fish money out, a little bit more big game money out, but fully funds a project. Either that or we kick it off. I think it's a good project. Same thing with starvation.
That one, so wait, back on Duchesne, that was not a WI project?
It is, but it's a medium ranked, so it won't get any WI funding. So that one's kind of a do you want to fund it? Yes. If the council doesn't want to increase it, then I would suggest kicking it off.
Thoughts?
Okay, so next down, same thing with this one. How much more does this one need?
So starvation pier, Randy, Blue Ribbon's not going to,
Not going to.
so we would need to add that 35,000 from Blue Ribbon to it to fully fund it.
So thoughts on this one? I guess my feeling on this one is to kick it off.
I guess my feeling is this is a partially built pier. This would be kind of putting a cap on a project. I think it makes sense to finish it.
It's supposed to be the final phase too.
And it's probably opportunistic because it's about extending a sidewalk down during low water conditions. So the drought year, so probably good year to build it.
Do you think if it went back to Blue Ribbon next year, it'd have a chance, or is it just not something they're interested in?
I think it would have a chance in Blue Ribbon, yeah.
Why didn't it get funded this year with Blue Ribbon?
Did propose it in front of Blue Ribbon, so we.
Oh, it wasn't for, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we looking at? If it doesn't get funded, low water year, it's gonna be an unusable pier to the handicap accessible. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
I can't remember the whole topic of it.
I think
She's gonna put some switchbacks in it to get it down to the water again.
Yeah, get down to the water. I think it doesn't go down to the water during the water conditions right now. It was supposed to be ADA accessible when it was originally built.
Right. So it doesn't get funded, then it's unusable by the ADA population.
During low water times.
During low,
yeah.
It's most likely gonna be this year, so. I don't know. I'm all for the starvation pier. But
So should we fully fund that with sport fish money then? I'm okay with that.
I got the funds. Yeah.
Same thing with Lake Canyon, which needs another 20,000. Lake Canyon's one that it's kind of another one of those that we've funded for years and probably should cap it off.
Oh yeah.
What's next?
Already talked about that one. This one. Oh, we've already talked about that one as well.
Mahogany?
Actually, let's do East Bear
It's
Lake.
getting funded.
Well, that's the problem with this one is it's not funded.
Oh,
So this one does have 50,000 from this council. I warned the sportsman groups off of it because it's one of those that can't get broken up. It needs $500,000. And so that's kind of the discussion. I think it's definitely a project we want to do. It's on the cash. It's going to be popular with the sportsman groups, but it didn't rank well through WRI. So the decision point at this meeting is, do we want to shunt a whole bunch of funding to it, go back to the sportsman's group, see if they want to help more with it, or do we want to kick it to next year and hope it ranks better through WRI, have them write a better proposal? My feeling is that it's so far away from that $500,000 that I would probably recommend we kick it to next year.
Yeah, if it was at least half funded, how we go that route, try to figure out how to make up the rest, but where it's basically our 50K and all.
that's it. Yeah.
my problem with that is this one backyard in northern Utah over the last 20 years has been left in the dust on habitat work. I feel like we're finally doing a lot of good projects. I hate to see this one, phase one, in a great area, not have a chance. I mean, we could make room elsewhere and go back to the sportsman group and say, hey, we're coming up with this much, half of it or whatever we come up with, we fund it now because it's a great area, guys.
Tyler, why did it rank lower?
I mean, it could be a lot of things. It could just be that the proposal wasn't written very well. I mean, that's kind of what I default to most of the time is that.
I would say you're right because Nate just quit. Nate was ramrodding that project, so.
I mean, if we're willing to make other adjustments to.
I just think it's a bridge too far. I think we all support it. We all want to see it happen, but $500,000. Because like I said, it's not like it has a lot of scatter portion that we could fund. It's all a big bull hog. And so it's kind of an all or nothing.
Yeah, so Tyler, what you're saying is if we partially fund it now and partially fund it next year, the cost is gonna go way up because we're gonna have to bring that bullhog in twice and contracting, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for bullhogs, you know, it's a 1,300 acre bullhog. If we go do a half and half, it'll cost 30% more to do that. So I like to do these big ones all at once. What did it score, Allison? I mean, it was high, wasn't it? It was just.
It's not high up.
It's pretty
It's
close.
a 138, so it's close.
Forest Service property, correct?
Yeah,
So NEPA's been done and all that.
it's got some state land as well, but 1,000 acres are forest, 300 is state PWI.
I mean, I think we put this number one on the contingency list. If certain things fall into place, like let's say we see, you know, some infrastructure money come from the Forest Service. We see a lot of PR money get approved, stuff like that. I think
I'm happy
would
with
push it
that.
to the front. But
If it's
I'd
number
be-
one, I'd be fine with that, guys.
Let's work with the region. I think Daniel's on and we can work with Shane to see if we can bring this one back a bit stronger next year.
Yeah. I think the message from this council is pretty clear to the region that this is a priority. This one kind of made me sick to not be able to push it hard in the sportsman's meeting, but it's just there.
Well, the other thing is it puts it on the radar. We could have more in-depth conversations with the groups leading up to that meeting next year.
Daniel, do you have a comment?
No, that sounds like a great plan. We can rework this proposal and make it a lot stronger for next year. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, start the sportsman's groups, conversations earlier on it, maybe like Justin suggested. It's a good idea.
We need to go back up one to that East Bear Lake.
What's the deal with that one?
It's also partially funded, but it's a medium, score of 131. Oh, just kidding, they have it as a high, but it's a 131. So
How much does it
it
need?
needs an additional 90,000. And if that's one we can get some from Sitla, that would be one thing.
Yeah, Sitla has usually given us money for this one, and this is on our Fish and Wildlife Service request, right?
Oh, that's true.
I think we let this one ride.
That's a good point.
It's got hopefully some help coming to it.
That was a Habitat Council phone call, just so you know.
Okay, what's next?
Okay. I highlighted, or I put a note on these, but they're fully funded if we on those two projects.
I'm okay with leaving those there. Southwood Cliffs was a question, but the BLM came in pretty heavy with funding on that one.
And BLM came in with funding on Indian Springs as well, along with all the easy money, so those two are good. Okay, then we get down to the two you brought up, Tyler.
So now we're down to those two, and
Mhm.
there's nothing left to put into them. That's too bad.
I hate to bring it up because I actually like the project, but on line 33, the 6027 one, I mean, that's taking a ton of Habitat Council dollars. The 200,000. I don't know. I just
What project was that, Justin? I don't remember.
that's the fencing one. It's near Tabby Mountain. I don't know if we could break that into a couple projects or a couple years or not. I mean, I remember the need was real, but
Yeah, I remember this.
That was
The
landowner
private
issues.
owners
yeah, I mean,
crossing the stream or
it's-
something.
it's 200,000 a habitat council for big game. So that, I don't know if it can be phased or not. Do we have anyone from Northeast Region on the call?
Hey, Justin, this is Pat from Northeast Region Habitat Program Manager. I'm still working on the water rights issues of this. I think we discussed taking that part of the project out. The fencing, I've discussed with the neighbor, the issues there, and he's on board to get that right, that upper section of the fence. So we're good to go on the fencing portion, just however much, I guess if you want to phase that into next year with the water line or do it all this year, it's be a good discussion.
Yeah, and Pat, I'm not trying to pick on your project because I do like it. It's just the only source of funding is Big Game Habitat Council. I mean, are there any other avenues for funding partnerships or money streams that could come in?
I could maybe work with NRCS since it's a shared border with private property owners. I could explore that option and see what they think. That's the only thing I can think of offhand though.
Okay.
It's our WMA. I mean, that's the reason.
Yeah, and I know it, and that's why I love it, and that's why I hesitate to even bring it up. But yeah, just trying to figure out a way to balance this.
I mean, if we funded it at the 98,000 to do the fence, and then you re-proposed the water next year.
What's more needed, the fence or the water, if you had to pick?
It's hard to say. You know, the fence, I think the encroachment from the private property is a serious threat to the WMA, and having to deal with that owner by owner if some time goes by would make that more difficult. The water rights, I think there's still some time to get those sorted out after talking with our folks here in the region. So I would put the fencing as a higher priority.
Okay, I know I'm putting you in a weird spot.
No, you're fine.
What do they need for the fence then?
98,550.
That cost increase, they'll probably have us a water.
Yeah.
Nobody can get a fence for what they think they're getting it for anymore.
I mean, the other option is we can explore other discussions, but this was a big one that I looked at this week.
I think another option I'm thinking of is maybe our heavy equipment crew, if we were able to get the materials, but that would be quite some time for them to spend on that project.
If we don't repair yet, we might have more time. If you can do it in the winter.
It's not going to happen. What do you think that would do to the cost? I mean, this is kind of late in the game to play with those numbers. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we kick the whole thing the next year and have them talk to heavy equipment crew. I don't know.
I think we should leave the fencing on there now.
The fencing would help, even just a portion of the fencing on that northern end where we have issues with the encroachment would be very beneficial to get that done the upcoming fiscal year.
Pat, remind me on the water, what are we trying to accomplish there? That's one I can't remember very well.
On this one, we have water rights coming out of Red Creek Reservoir, and you can see on just to the west of that line, we irrigate that property, and that's a great stretch of land when the deer and elk migrate down through there. It's a good stopover place for them to get some forage and then good nutrition going into the wintertime. We've seen that's really important, especially with our deer herds. So, but the holdup on that is we're still working out with the neighbors and with the irrigation company and water rights to get everything. There's just a couple little issues in there iron out.
Okay. I think if we're there, I think we split this one. I think we do the fence this year and look at the water next year when things are solidified.
Okay. Good with that?
Anyone feel differently?
No, I'm good.
Okay, next one.
I wasn't keeping great notes in the beginning of this because I didn't know I was in charge of the WMAs. Can we look at the Central Region WMA, that one that was, that burnt?
Nuggets?
I think so. It was the mountain bike trail. It's not very much money. What's everybody's thoughts on that one? I mean, can big game money be used better elsewhere, or do we need it elsewhere? Or are we good?
I just remember you didn't like you didn't like this one, Steve. I remember that.
I don't. But I mean, it's not very much money. I remember it being more money, Justin. So
yeah,
if that money can go better somewhere else, let's do it. If not, let's leave it alone.
It can definitely go better somewhere else. I would be okay. I would be okay kicking it off the list, going back to the sportsman groups and asking if they want a thumbs up or thumbs down it. Thumbs up would cost them basically the rest of the project. And then if I get fire rehab money, we can swap that out. Not that that's looking very good.
But we don't need to do anything with it. I remembered it being more money. I wasn't taking notes all the time. So
I think it was more the principle of it though that you had at our meeting. So
Yeah, that was a tough one. I mean,
Yeah, Steve, I'm agreeing with you on this one. You and I both grimaced a little bit on this, not certain that this money is actually appropriate coming from here.
Mark, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so part of this money is going to be matching a recreation grant. So it's going to make that money available. So it's not just mountain bike trails. We're talking recreation trails. People ride horses on that property, for hunting on the property as well. But it is a big recreation property, whether you like it or not. And I don't like it, but that's the reality. So we need to take care of the property the best we can. And that's going to require us maintaining the approved trails that we have, and then they need some work. And part of that recreation grant that we're working with another group on is going to do a lot of work to make those trails better and make them sustainable.
I mean, I think it's appropriate for the council funding just because it's a WMA. And we have to fund infrastructure and recreation-oriented stuff on our WMAs if we're going to allow recreation to happen.
Right, and I'll just say this, and Mark said it, if we could, we'd shut down all those other non-hunting, non-wildlife related uses, but we're not in that situation. You have a primary trail in the area that's gone through there for decades, and we're not in a position where we can shut that down. But we want to limit that, other types of recreation as much as possible. And I think that's the story I've heard from you, Mark, as well. And closing the other trails that are not appropriate is what they've been doing. And they've been doing a great job dealing with it. Not only a tough situation, but basically the entire WMA burned 2 years ago. And trying to bring that back is tough. And so, I don't know. Mark, other thoughts?
There's some other good things about this. We are getting these mountain bike teams to provide labor to do work for every rider on team has to produce a certain amount of labor per year. So they were helping us work on these trails and help sign the trails and maintain them. And they know it's a wildlife management area. We've been able to spread that message, and I think that's a positive thing. And they get some ownership, of what they're working on, and help us to enforce the rules on these trails. So there's some good things about it too. It's not all bad.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing. I mean, if you put the mountain bike side thing aside, which I think is where a lot of us are getting hung up on it, and you just look at the project, we're talking about 5,000 seedlings to put in an area that recently burned that has a lot of deer. And that's a good thing. And Tyler's right. It is appropriate for Habitat Council to fund that.
And the sportsman's groups, they basically funded that portion of it. Yeah. They like that Mad Max stuff. Yeah. If it wasn't asking for the UORG money, or not UORG, what's it called, the recreation funding, and I probably wouldn't support it. But I really like the group. I like the folks that are out there chasing that money. I want to support that. And those decisions come out tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, like Mark said, it really has educated the folks in that area that the WMA is a wildlife management area. It's not a multiple use for everything and anything, but we're giving a little to maintain the main corridor for mountain bikers, which, they're putting in work too, and from a good educational standpoint and trying to get that WMA back up and running. I would recommend that we still fund this. Okay, that's my thoughts. Yeah, in a perfect world, all of our WMAs would be closed off day, but anything non, hunting or
during certain times of year, yeah.
But that's not the world we live in, and this WMA is right on in the urban corridor, and it does get deer, use, and we have to meet some folks halfway on some of these things.
We are enforcing a seasonal closure for mountain bikes on most of the property. So that's another thing, enforcement's required, and that requires law enforcement to help us do that. But that's something we're trying to do.
I think
Pretty tough to keep walkers and horseback guys off there in the winter, but at least we can keep mountain bikes off.
Yeah. Thanks for weighing in, Mark. I think we're going to keep it on there. Okay, next.
Next is just the two boulders projects, right?
And these were probably going to go in the wrong direction, right?
I'm just hoping to add more money to the
I know.
Can't find anywhere to take money from, though. The only thing I was thinking was picking one of these, which one of these, Jim, do you think is more important, that you think we ought to work hard to fund?
Jim had to leave and ran down to a project, but I think Government Creek would be the one that we.
Government Creek, Gary, do you know if on Government Creek, are we doing the contract or is Forest Service doing the contract?
I would, stuff that they've done on phase 1 and phase 2, we've done all the contracting except for when they've used in-house machines to do the work. And I think that this one would be us doing the contract is.
Because I was hoping that Jim could actually combine phase 2 and phase 3, because he was just putting the contract out and that we could use fast track money for it.
Yeah, I think that would actually be a possibility because he's working on that right now.
Or what do you think about that, Eric? I think I could help with that too.
Yeah, if we can fast track it.
Fast track it and spend as much as possible by July 1.
Yeah. That would be my suggestion then, is to have him add the acres, get that out as soon as possible.
I don't understand, Tyler. So you're saying use this year's funding, and where's that funding coming from?
So it's basically coming from Habitat Council dollars that
are not going to get spent.
Not going to get spent.
Okay.
So if you understand the way that this program and my program works, people ask for more money than they spend. And it's usually, in my program, it's like 30% is kind of what we see is what we need to over allocate. We don't over allocate in this council oftentimes there's big land purchases at the end of the year that they identify. But there's always leftover money at the end of the year that will go into the bank account.
We have to ask for it then
Yeah.
to spend later.
That's what that $700,000 appropriation increase is basically to get to that money that was put in the bank.
So would that fully fund the Government Creek one this fiscal year if we could do it? Is that what you're asking?
I think so. I think I could probably help with some of that too. I've got some of that fast track need as well.
Daniel, what are you thinking? I mean, so
Has
I mean,
10 square
The
meters.
only biggest thing is, can you actually do it before July 1st?
It's-
Both
it's a lot of
phases.
acres.
It's a lot of acres. That's my only. It's a nice idea, but I'm never physically they would get it done before July 1st.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I talked to him, he thought he could, but you're right. It really depends on. And we can make that decision once the contract comes back and we see what the actual capacity of the contractor is.
And then if they bring 12 machines, yeah, they can do it.
So we can leave it on then for now, but earmark or just think of it as something that could change. When it gets down to it.
Well, the other thing I'd say on these two, I remember when Jim was gonna start really focusing on the boulders, and we said that's gonna be a priority for us as a big game program, as a wildlife section, all the way to the director's office. We really wanted to see big projects come forth, and so, I mean, I know every year there's internal conservation permit dollars that go to some of these as well. I think that might be a good fit to fully fund one of those.
That's what I was thinking.
This year, and that's, so I would hate to take off the Habitat Council funding that's associated with them. I would rather try to make up the difference with that 300,000 that you get from the big game program and just make these whole. And now I'm speaking for Kobe, so I gotta be careful, but.
No, that's what we did last
Go ahead.
year. I think that's the strategy I'm talking about too. Is using ICP, but it's basically all the ICP money.
Yeah, that's right, for two projects.
Which is okay.
They're good projects, though, and really, I mean, it goes back to our conversation about treating some of the right areas that we had last time and other, these are the right areas.
I agree.
Tyler, I just talked to Jim and he said he for sure could throw that on together with the phase 2. They're really close to being able to put that out. The concern is whether or not they'd be able to get it all completed by June 30th. And if it works, doing it as a fast track with the knowledge that you're going to carry it over, or if that grenades the whole idea. So
I don't think it grenades the whole idea. I think getting it out, getting them started, and billing as much as possible before the end of the fiscal year is probably the goal.
Okay, that yes can be done.
Okay. That's all that I had on my list of things to look at.
This is Gary. I'm going to bomb myself here, but the 103,000 for Bicknell Bottoms, 40,000 is for that Overlook Road. That's something that we can do any year in the future. If you're looking for.
Wow.
That very top line, design and build a road and parking area with information kiosks. It's just a fun thing. It's not even part of the HMP. It was just something Jim had an idea and I like the idea. It'll be a fun educational spot, but it's something that can be done at any point in the future.
So you're saying we could reduce Bicknell to 63,000?
Yes.
It's not going to help us, though. I mean, we're deficient in big game and waterfowl, not.
But I think we're done with those categories. I think it's okay to exceed those categories. What I'm looking at now is the 101.49 to 60,000 over in the total.
Oh, I see.
So I guess, Eric, you need to get to 100%, right?
Yep.
So we got to find 60,000. There's 40 of it right there. And I think I can find the other 20.
Yeah, I mean, if that road and parking lot was something up above and beyond what the HMP's purpose, the vision of the HMP's purpose was, then probably okay with that. Like I said before, that's not only, I guess, it's region priority, it's our director's office priority too, and it's frankly, it's a DNR level priority. So I don't want to minimize the key aspects of what we're trying to do there. And if you're telling us that can wait another year and it's not one of those key aspects, then I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's just an idea that Jim had separate of the HMP process, and I support the idea, but it's not tied to any of the political frictions and things going on. We've got with the 63, we've got the key items in there that need to be in there.
What about dropping Monroe down to 30?
No, I think I've got an idea for the last 20. 5873.
What region?
Central. So this is West Jordan, Big Bend. I feel like we paid for the pond already. I feel like this was the one that we've given them a lot of money over the years. And we've given them money for the pond, for the community fishery. And I think we've paid our dues on this. And it's a medium rank. So I say we cut this project.
Other thoughts on that? See, what pots of money was that looking to pull from? Just sport fish.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So what do you, yeah, inform me on this one again. I remember they built the pond, the walkway, were they restoring the bank or something?
They were building a whole community park there. And a lot of the funding was coming from the settlement with the power company or something on that.
Sharon Still?
Sharon Still, yeah, the Sharon Still settlement. And the pond is built. We did a tour on it this last year. It needs some vegetation put in on it, but I think they're scheduled to open that park up this summer. And I think, I don't know for sure, but I think we've put between WRI and Habitat Council, I think we probably put $300,000 or $400,000 into it.
Way more than that.
Way more than that.
Yeah.
So I felt like
going back how many years? 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
2016 probably.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing effort for quite a while. It's a good project. It's just, I think that for this council, I think we paid for the pond.
I mean, you guys are much more familiar with the history of it.
Yeah, I think in the end, Ben, we're still gonna get a pond. They're looking for.
It's already there,
Cake, so to speak, so it's kind of fluff money that probably doesn't need to be spent.
Essentially what that does is if we pull this one, that gets us to right at, where we're in the black and we're not over allocated at all, which is our goal. So.
No, I'm in favor of it. I'll motion for it. Cause I wasn't aware of our previous input. So.
There it is up on the screen. That's how much was put on it. Are you kidding me?
The bottom.
Right here, 700.
What? Stop it.
So DNR watersheds done 380. Tech Council's done 407.
I don't feel so guilty now. That's for reimbursement.
And that's going to be, that's an awesome place to stick a community fishery right there in the middle of the valley. But that was our dues.
We've contributed almost 800,000.
That's good to have on the record right there. Thanks for pulling that up.
I was just thinking about what it would be like to be one of the habitat managers in this meeting, where they're almost like, please don't look at my region, please don't look at my I don't know, because Tyler's like, I got one in the central region. I can just imagine, where's he at?
We have great habitat managers and they're working their butts off.
Who stepped forward, Gary? You stepped forward on that road. That was
Yeah.
your stud, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah. And, a lot of our managers, they're always looking at that and trying to, they don't overinflate their WMA budgets. All of our managers are doing a great job of maintaining what they have and only asking for what they need. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Kevin Norman got a hold of Troy from SFW, and he said he'd give us the 25 for the refuge. So
Awesome.
Okay.
That's really big. That's cool.
That's cool.
We balanced our books, guys.
No, I got $4,500.
How much road can we pay for $4,500?
I'll put a second handrail on that bridge.
You deserve it, Gary.
That's all you can do. All right. Any other things that we need to review?
Well,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, you may want to rank your contingency list and then field tour are the two things.
Okay. Describe the contingency.
So if funds become available, we just want to have it prioritized. So what if money come available, what of those projects would be the number one we'd want to go to? That's all I'm saying as far as prioritize. Let's just put them in order of how you would want them to go.
You may want to break out that Utah Lake one so you can kind of take pieces of it.
And we could probably do something like that.
Yeah.
Like an amount of what you would want to.
Yeah, there were a number of accesses there, and if it weren't such a big number, you could probably chew off part of that every year.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of accessing Utah Lake. I think more and more people want to be able to get to it.
Do we need Mark's help to rank which are most important?
Go ahead, Mark.
Guys, a lot of this was kind of done at the last minute with the Utah Lake Commission, so we didn't have a whole lot of input. A lot of this cost is road improvements, which I don't know why we can't get the county to do more, but probably the highest priority one in this list right here, I would say would be Mill Race. That's the one that's kind of right adjacent to I-15, and the road going in there just doesn't have the gravel on the sides that can be graded up. It needs to have stuff added to the top. County's been wanting us to help them with that for many years, but it's like we can't afford that. A lot of road bases, pretty expensive stuff. So that's probably the Sweet Lane. Mill Race would probably be number one. And I'm not sure about the number two. Sweet Lane's a long road, and the county should take care of that. We've worked on the parking lots and stuff, but not the actual roads in the past.
Mark, this is Tyler. My question is about the new Utah Lake Authority that they created. Are they going to have funding and the ability to tax that they can start paying for some of this stuff?
Good question. It doesn't sound like it's going to change a whole lot. I'm not sure about that, how that's going to change that, but we can spend a little bit of this money. Some of the fencing that would be fairly cheap to put in on like Mosita and Mill Race. We can get that done fairly cheaply. But mainly it's that road-based material that's going to add up to the cost. I don't know about Eric would probably know better than I would as far as he's the one to put this project together with the commission, because I guess the commission is going to stay the same for another year and then change over. I'm not sure how it's going to work.
Okay, so Mark, are you saying so Sweet Lane, we could maybe drop that one?
Well, I definitely think the county needs to step up the plate, and I mean if you look at his map, that's a long road going into there, and I just don't think we should be paying for road base to put on that road for like 2.5 miles. I need to communicate with the county and plan a little more on this, but any money that becomes available, we can spend it on certain places that need it.
Yeah, so I guess I would suggest maybe let's pull that one off for this time around, fund the rest of those, and then maybe you can have some more of those conversations with the county, Mark, and
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to kind of go back to the drawing board and replan this project with Eric and have a little more input there and have more communication with the county.
yeah, work with Eric and point him towards, angling access is important, but it's all road-based money that makes it harder for us. Okay.
So of the 6 projects, which is the number one?
I'm going to show my bias, but I like the Mahogany Ridge.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that, don't we?
Yep.
What's number 2?
I mean, I still like Perry Net. I feel like that's one that we've worked them over for years and they've done what we asked them, and I still would like to see BLM pay for some of that, but to me, that's my number 2.
What was the Habitat Council amount on that?
I think it's like 42,000.
But
it would need 80.
It needs 84 though.
I say if it's 40, as a contingency project, that could happen, but 80 is tough.
Okay. Everybody good with number 2? Is Perry?
That's on Utah Lake.
No, that's over in the northeast region.
Oh, okay. What's number 1 then?
Mahogany.
Okay. It's at the bottom, so I'm just making sure.
Yes.
We're just putting numbers on the side.
Oh, there we are, over there in the corner.
Steve, when we rank number 3, are you going to ask what the number 1 is?
Do we need number 2 with Mahogany instead of $100,000?
We'll just keep emphasizing Mahogany's still number 1. It's okay. Let's find a number 3.
I'd say Utah Lake.
Yeah.
I'd say Utah Lake, but I'd just say
minus
that.
that.
I'd only just say the 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part
Mill
that we,
race. Mill race.
That's not helpful.
The irony is, I think looking at everything else, I would almost rather fund Pat's water project fourth, even though we edited it, to be honest. I don't even know how we do that, but
just put it in there.
Just put it in the mountain in there.
Yeah.
unless they're still different. But I think if they could figure it out and we could be done with that, that would be a good one.
Is that one that Pat sent to Jed? I can't remember.
I think he's still on. Pat, did you send that to Gib?
I don't think so.
No, no, I didn't send that one to Gip. There's no grazing component on that property.
Okay.
That's for water development funds. You're supposed to be able to use water development funds for wildlife, but now that they're not WRI money anymore, I don't know if that happens.
101,700. Yeah. But that is for.
I'd probably just put.
And just in there,
Sure.
or you want to keep going there?
That's a good. what, 700,000 worth of contingency?
Yeah, if we get to those, we're good.
Good with that.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Field tours, date and location.
We need to vote on.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
I'll make a motion to approve the funding list as it stands now. Funding list and contingency list.
Okay, we have a motion from Tyler, and we have a second from Jack. Potentially his last motion for this council. Appreciate that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the motion carries. So we have a fully approved list right at the funding line, 4,500 less actually. And contingency list if some other funds become available. So thanks everybody, really appreciate that. It's been a lot of projects, a lot of hard work. Yeah, the last thing we need to do is talk about a field tour. We had a couple of ideas already. I don't recall what they were.
Monroe. Well, Monroe tour.
Monroe tour. Cinnamon Creek will be an option. There'll be some work that'll be done on that. I mean, if we look at doing this tour, in August, that's when we typically done these.
I mean, I'd love to see Cinnamon just because I've seen Monroe a ton, but I'm sure we'll see it at some point.
Other ideas?
I'd say if the habitat managers have anything as well you want to throw out there.
Yeah. Invite the habitat managers to weigh in on ideas for tours.
I think Cinnamon Creek would be good because I think we've done the northeast, the southern, the southeast recently. These are all places we've been, so it may be central or northern time anyways.
Yeah, I think Ben would have our heads on a stick if we didn't suggest Cinnamon Creek.
He'll be fine. Don't worry about him. Other ideas? Navajo Lake, maybe?
I think I've thrown it out at last meeting. I think it's going the opposite direction, but the Monroe project. I'm trying to find that right now, and I can't remember the project number.
Yeah, I mentioned Monroe. I think Monroe would be a great thing for the council to see. And like I said at the last meeting, that's a pretty well-oiled tour by now. They've been doing that work for years.
And that's why I was thinking it'd be so fascinating, because you could see the various years and what it's accomplished up to this point and what we have coming up in the future. So I think that would be fascinating to see.
Hell, we could do more than one tour. We used to do more than one tour.
That's a good idea, because I'm hesitant on Cinnamon Creek where we haven't done any habitat work. I'd love to have it in my backyard, but at the same time, habitat work.
We could, when we make a tour like this, we'll definitely make it more than Cinnamon Creek. We could go to Mahogany Ridge, we could go to the Blacksmith Fork diversion there, and then find some projects that are already done as well. Make it a day, right? It's not just gonna, that might be the focus, but we'll take some other stuff to go see too. There's a region in Canada.
Nikita, did you have a thought?
I know we came to Southeastern region last year, but I just wanted to throw out that if any of the council members at any point would like to see any of the projects in our region, me or any of the habitat section would be happy to take you out. So if there's anything you want to see, just please reach out and let us know.
Well, and the other thing that I'll offer is WRI does 5 tours a year, and you're always welcome to join us on one of those as well. And that same website that Allison was showing you, watershed.utah.gov, has the events page, and it'll give you the details on all of the tours. I think only one of them is scheduled right now, but
Northern's scheduled for June 15th.
just let me know if you're interested on. I think that one's going up to the west.
I'll send you guys emails on them.
I know last year I went on the WI tour, the Burnt. I just forgot the name of it. Is it Burnt Beaver?
Yeah.
That was fascinating. Great work that's being done there, and that was a fascinating tour.
Other than the fact that it rained the whole day, right?
Great. Makita, I want to say thanks for offering that to the council. Mark, do you have a thought?
I think we have a WRI tour scheduled for the summer up at Ephraim Canyon, talking about stuff we've done and stuff that's planned in that watershed. So that's definitely something. Somebody wants to join, please come.
When is that?
Don't know I got the date yet, but probably had scheduled that. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
All right. If you get a date, just name it to me.
Yeah, when is that?
Daniel, maybe when we get all of the dates, let's just blast those out to this group. And that way everybody can be aware of it. Okay, any other last minute ideas before we make decisions on tours? All right. So we have Cinnamon Creek or Monroe. Those
are the two I got. Unless there's any other ones.
The only other one I was thinking is that that work that 106 is doing on our Third Creek. I don't know if that's going to be going on in August or what. But just the fact that
you can make that happen.
There's some other that could be a treatment that's in the creek. Might see. I mean, I've seen it before, but that's an idea.
So what Tyler's talking about is we're working to with some contractors to help demonstrate a different method of doing some aspen treatments using it's a cable towing method, a little bit different than chaining. And so we've got an experimental plot identified up on our current Creek WMA that Pat Ringgold has graciously offered to help us out with and help facilitate. And so with that project, if we can make it run, which we're working really hard to make it work, would probably happen, in July.
And that might be one that you could actually see the work taking place if we scheduled it, right? Yeah.
Well, then maybe that's not all. We plan on either Cinnamon Creek or Monroe, but we'll just, when that work's happening up on Current Creek, we just throw it out there. Hey, we're going to try to go up there and see it on this day. If you want to join us, let us know.
Yeah, it could be our second tour or something.
It would be cool to see it in person and see it afterwards. Those are fun to watch.
And Eric, did you see this was going to be sometime in August? Is that correct?
Well, the normal tour usually is in August. If we were to go look at the Current Creek project, it would probably be happening in July sometime.
Really, we can schedule it whenever it's best for everybody.
Right. Yeah, you're right. We have normally scheduled the Habitat Council tour in August, but we can do it in July. Heck, we can do it in June.
It can be any time. There's no
And don't plan around me, but August I know I could go. June I'll still be doing treatment in June.
Okay. I'm good with August. So Monroe or Cinnamon Creek? Votes.
Monroe, there's been work that's been going on for how many years now? So there's lots of stuff that has been done. If you're more inclined to
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning, before and afters. That's what you want.
And Cinnamon Creek is a division. We're going to be holding other events there, and we could kind of have a view
Grand
into.
opening,
Right, right.
whatever we're calling it. I don't know.
Name like the grand open event will be, but we could invite this group there. Sportsman groups will probably be there. Another ribbon cutting.
Okay, so Monroe.
Monroe,
I haven't seen it either, so I'm happy either way.
We need to look at dates. Like I say, we'll start maybe in August if that sounds okay. You know, we can work our way back up into July if we need to.
Anytime after August 10th is best for me.
Okay.
17th, 24th.
17th would be better for me.
Or there's the 11th. Is that too close to your 10th?
No, that's fine. The 11th works for me.
11th works for me too.
What about the 17th?
Wouldn't work for me.
Oh, okay.
Wife's going on a long vacation. I have the boys, so that would good for me.
Bring them along.
That's what I was wondering, yeah. Maybe I could
We're looking at the 11th.
deal with a 4-year-old and 6-year-old.
For Gary.
Yeah, Gary. August 11th work for you if we came down and.
August 11th at Cinnamon Creek, I'll be there.
No.
We can tour the Monroe in my sleep at this point, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say if Gary can't do it, then there's Jason Clean and a bunch of others.
Either can run the tour.
Yeah. No, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah. The 11th will be fine.
Okay. Tyler said he paid the bill. Oh, wait, maybe not.
The bill for what? I already paid the bill for Monroe. I'll live with 3 years of that sucker.
Thanks, man.
That's funny, right?
All right. So we're settled. August 11th down to Monroe. Daniel and you guys can work out the details and get that sent out to us. Work on some food.
Jack, is this really your last meeting?
I think so.
Okay. I'm gonna miss you.
You don't have to hear my speech and sermon every year.
It's a good reminder. But I think there'll be some movement. So I'm hoping we'll see what happens. But
Now that you're leaving.
You can do your legacy. You can claim it.
call it the Jack Memorial.
Jack Memorial.
Okay. Any other comments from our managers or folks that are online with us before we adjourn? Okay. Anything from this group here? I'll just thank you again for your time and effort. When will the final list be sent out?
As soon as we get approval from the director's office, so within a month, I mean, for sure.
And otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing everybody on a tour in August. So, okay, that's all that we have. Then I'll accept the motion to adjourn our meeting.
I move.
Jack should make it.
Yeah, Jack, move your way adjourn. Okay, we got a motion from Jack and a second from Steve to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it, guys.
Well, that is
Thanks,
going to
Randy.
say a motion by Jack and seconded by Jeff.